The people of Greenland are MAGA. Yes, that's what Donald Trump posted to his Truth social network in the last 24 hours. What on earth is going on? My name's Tom Harwood, and this is the GB News Originals series. Greenland is a territory of around 1 million miles squared. It's the largest island in the world by some calculations. But could it become a part of the United States of America? The incoming president, Donald Trump, seems to think that it should, despite the territory currently belonging to Denmark. Of course, it used to be part of Denmark proper, but around 40 years ago it split off to become a territory, electing its own government and only relying on Denmark for national security issues. But could it be about to switch teams? The Americans, of course, have an American base on the island. They've had it ever since the beginning of the Cold War. At times, the base had tens of thousands of American troops on it, although only a few hundred remain on it today. But why is Greenland, in the eye of Donald Trump, so strategically important? Well, it sits at a crucial point in world affairs. Not only does it likely have access to a huge amount of oil and gas reserves, not only could it massively expand America's energy independence, but crucially, tactically, it accesses a part of the world that is becoming more and more contested. We've seen Russian ships, we've seen Chinese ships crawl across the North Pole area. They have been doing lots of research, lots of geological imaging. And why could that be? Why is Russia and why is China so interested in this area? Might it be safer for all of us that America has a steady base there and is able to patrol this crucial part of the world, this sea route between the different halves of the world, this sea route between different continents, and a place that might indeed be resource rich? It's not just about resources, it's also about space. Yes, the further north you go in the world, the easier it is to launch rockets for a certain special type of orbit. Ordinarily, we see rockets launch as close to the equator as possible because that's best for ordinary orbits. But if you want to do a polar orbit, then you need to launch as close to the poles as possible. Could this also be part of the equation? Well, there's a huge amount going on here, and it does look like others have been interested too. The Danish government, for their part, say that it's part of Denmark, but Greenland is having elections this year, and there is a huge amount of speculation that Greenland could well be asking to be independent of Denmark. The Chinese have been interested in setting up a base on that island. The EU has been interested in incorporating Greenland back into the European fold. So why doesn't America have a piece of the pie too? This could be an incredibly interesting area. Might Donald Trump add a 51st state, or even the first new territory in America for around a century? Well, today on GB News, we sat down with an expert to find out his view. Well, does everyone have a price? Let's pose that question to the policy fellow at the Adam Smith Institute, Alexander Bowen, speaking today in a personal capacity. Alexander, why does Donald Trump want to buy Greenland?
Well, I think there's two elements here. It sort of appeals to his sense of ego here as be the first US president in 100 years to genuinely expand the size of the country. And then there's the second sort of geopolitical aspect where there's more of a case to actually be made here. It's that Greenland, for instance, if the US were to buy it, it would increase its oil reserves by about 40%. It secures the GI-UK gap, which is the gap that Russian naval vessels use to enter the Atlantic Ocean. It also controls the Northern Sea route, which is the shortest route between Europe and Asia. So there's all these quite clear benefits. And in addition, there's quite critical aspect Greenland has to play in terms of the nuclear security of the United States, and that Greenland is essential to the polar route. So that's the shortest route between the US and Russia in terms of nuclear weapons and nuclear bombers. But there's some quite clear geopolitical reasons to actually buy the island, though it's not clear if he has that in mind.
Is Denmark not a member of NATO? I mean, can't America use Greenland, in effect, as a base through that international alliance, that nuclear umbrella?
Yeah, so the United States has maintained since 1940 a base in Denmark, in Greenland's part of Denmark. Since 1940, it's the Pituffik Air Force Base. So it used to be called the Tula Air Force Base. Historically, it's had 10,000, 20,000 troops based on it, but now it's really down to about 200, 300 troops. They obviously can continue to use this Air Force Base. And there's a bit of a challenge in the past. So in 2019, for example, China tried to buy a disused US base, 2 disused US Air Force bases on Greenland. And obviously Denmark had to say no. And what's happening now is there's going to be a referendum in all likelihood on Greenlandic independence sometime in April to coincide with their general election. And obviously, if they were to leave Denmark, they could then potentially leave NATO, which could open up a whole new can of worms for the United States.
So the real risk here is that China could be wanting to buy Denmark, buy Greenland as well, or at least establish influence there. I mean, why is this such a strategically important part of the world?
Well, there's just so many reasons. The resources under the island. If you think if it was a country on its own, it'd be about the fifth largest in terms of oil reserves. In terms of rare earth minerals, there's this huge potential. There's about $3.5 trillion worth of rare earth materials underneath the island, which is obviously critical to the new technological change we're experiencing in terms of electric vehicles and the renewable energy transition. So there was actually an article in Politico from 2019 where a senior European policy fellow was arguing that the EU should buy Greenland. So there's this sort of competing tensions emerging now between the United States, the EU, and China, all because there's large resource base there and just the security element is huge potentially.
Not much thought to the people of Greenland going on. Alexander Bowen, thank you very much indeed. Policy fellow at the Adam Smith Institute, as well as a commentator on things like this.
Goodness me. It all sounds incredibly far-fetched, but could this be genuinely about to happen? Well, Donald Trump Jr., the son of Donald Trump, the incoming president of the United States, of course, is due to speak to crucial people in Greenland, a country of only around 40 or 50,000 residents. It's not beyond the wit of man to see how the United States of America could spend, in American terms, a trivial amount of money, making, in Greenland terms, every single resident of that territory incredibly rich. Could we about to be seeing the art of the deal? It seems far-fetched. It seems like this is something out of science fiction or a peculiar sort of parallel world. But maybe we're stepping into that parallel world. Maybe the rulebook is being ripped up. Maybe the consensus of the post-war international order is starting to collapse. And if so, perhaps territory is legally up for the taking. It'll be one to be fascinating to watch. We'll keep an eye on it here at GB News. Could Greenland suddenly be about to raise up that star-spangled banner of the Stars and Stripes? Well, I've been Tom Harwood for GB News. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more exclusive content.